of nonviolent communication and what it can do for you. We have Paul Merrill. This show is officially my buddy Michael Mack's show. And it's called The God Talk Guys. And we talk about God, usually, he and I, and faith and questions like that. But this is very close.
I'm filling in.
I'm sure he would be. I'm sure Michael Mack would be. He's moving. He's moving now. Would approve. So we were discussing sadism and nonviolent communication.
I think, especially in that context where you're believing that maybe we're even disagreeing, but the idea that you're wanting. How shall I express this? You're saying that people want to hurt people.
Yes.
Right. People want to inflict pain.
This is the opposite. I mean, my significant other loves to disown people who need people.
That's something else again, right?
But do people? Well, sometimes people want to. They fight wars.
Right. No, I think people definitely do want to inflict. There are people who want to inflict pain and who enjoy the experience and sight that someone else is suffering. I'm not going to deny that.
Yep.
I still think that is a strategy to meet a need.
Wow, I mean, even if he's not right, that is
as a concept kind of blows your mind.
That is so wonderful. So you would think that we were talking about the people in Flint, that you'd agree with that. Their need was for money.
No, I would say their need, I don't know. No, because I see money is also a strategy to meet other needs.
Yeah, so those, right. Wow, so what was their need? The big government.
I would say their need may have been to, if you go back to think that they're trying to save money. They're trying to make something work. They don't have enough money to do what they believe they need to do. So they're going to save money by pumping in this different kind of water. So I think they were, it may have been that they were prioritizing, that they were caring in other areas.
That's probably what they thought.
We're going to care, and again, I'm sort of speculating about what I know about city budgets. And, we're going to care for our city worker pensions, or we're going to care for our teachers. And also, and here's the thing, maybe I want to pause and have you consider to see if you could open your own heart.
Yes, wow.
Whether they hoped that everything was going to turn out okay. Because you've said to me a couple times that you allowed that massage to occur, saying like, well, I'm really not liking this, but maybe it'll turn out all right. Maybe it'll be okay. So who knows? They may have thought that. It's like this might be a bad idea, but maybe it won't be so bad. Let's just do it. Let's save money. We need money.
That's very beautiful. That's very beautiful. And maybe they would consciously think that and not understand.
They might be more desperate than benign. Oh my God, we have no budget. We have no money. What are we going to do? Where are we going to get money? We have to.
Well, you're kind. I'd love to go back to the political sphere, but I don't think we'll have time this time. But there'll be a huge demand from the Super Bowl crowd to have you on again.
I think so.
So how about something I'm closer to my heart. So the two painful events of force feeding and breaking the bowl, so that the thing that you love about nonviolent communication, Paul was telling me before the show, he got into it because maybe you could share with us just that moment that you got into it when you had some empathy. Someone gave you some empathy.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, I won't describe the whole setup, but I was, I think just the experience of being empathized with the first time in my life was a revelation of pleasure and strangeness. And I actually stopped the person and said, what's going on here?
Well, tell them this very specifically, though. It was so moving.
Oh, all right, then I will. The story is more moving. Yes, it was actually, and it was significant to your stories. It was after the death of my mother, and I grew up in a family where we were cultured, and people read novels for fun, and people listened to the opera, and there were books of poetry in the house. And I assumed that when something profound like death showed up in our life, that culture would be a resource to communicate and manage this. And my experience was that it wasn't. We were not connecting. I didn't experience understanding of what was happening or connection among ourselves. So I felt bereft. I was in a communication desert. And then 6 months later, I just met someone at a conference, and she empathized. I don't know what she did, but I just stopped her and said, "What are you doing? This is strange, and I like it, but I don't know what's going on here." And she said, "Oh, I'm doing nonviolent communication."
And tell us about history, just that when you discovered.
Oh, and then later, and then Michael asked, like, "Well, do you remember what she said?" And I can't remember that, but I remember another moment not too long afterwards, where I can still remember. I can still remember the words and sentences of empathy showing up in my life, and one was a reflection of my story, where I was getting to know a woman on a date, and she said, "Oh, you like history?" And it was like this light bulb went off in me, clarifying myself to myself. I really do like history. Oh my God, it's really
true. Yeah.
Right, and it was like it just sort of gave me, receiving empathy gave me all this energy and and almost kind of a self-love, and all she was doing was the component of empathy, of just reflecting my story accurately back to myself.
But accurately, with a thrown addition, because you didn't say I loved history.
No, she had heard my paragraph and reduced it to 3 potent words.
Well, you didn't marry her though.
No, that was one more place where I was acquiring skills to accomplish other things, but not necessarily have that relationship.
So you said it was a moment of self-love too. Could you explain that?
Well, I think that's or self-appreciation in understanding myself, and how else? It seemed like I don't know. It seemed like just kind of a fine thing, like a sort of. But I looked at myself and it was good. I thought I looked at Paul and like, Paul is good. You know, he likes
this is the guy talk out.
Right. It's like,
I looked at myself.
I did it on purpose.
And I was very good.
I did it on purpose.
No, but let's a little slow motion that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So she says, "Oh, you like history." And you feel something, at least the first time you said it, felt like self-love in some ways.
Uh-huh.
A new feeling, perhaps, at least, or maybe not. Never mind. It felt like self-love. And let's slow motion that. How does discovering that you like someone saying you like history, I can imagine feeling love at that moment.
Yeah, again, I don't want to emphasize the love too much.
Yes.
Sorry if I break your heart by saying that.
No, but you said that was your first word.
That word. So, but I may have exaggerated. I would say the components were that I understood myself more, and I accepted myself. I saw myself with more understanding and coherence, and it was also experience of pleasure. Of this is who I am, and this makes sense, and I'm sort of bringing in other needs that were met by those.
Yes, but I can see
words.
that it, and you've said it in other situations you've shared with me. If I was you at this moment, I could feel very touched. Oh my, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Someone has just helped me discover. I remember when I sat in Quaker meeting and you only spoke to speak if there's a spirit speaks through you. And I discovered, oh my, there's another voice inside. And that's so nice to hear. And so there's another you that you're discover. Someone's helping you discover, and you too, both of you together.
I like that phrase. Yeah, there's a discovery of myself. You know.
And that's just so nice. And probably some love is involved. Oh my, thank you, date, thank me for, oh, and this is who wow, I'm a lover of history. Who would have guessed?
Yeah, it's fun watching your body movements. Like self-respect. It's like, that's a fine thing to be. I'm kind of enjoying myself. You know.
So now that we understand, that's the heart of nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg, I hope you read his book. Sold over 1 million copies, it says on the cover. That's because it works. So now we understand from Marshall Rosenberg, the heart of it is to have that compassionate flow, both in ourselves and between people, you and this wonderful woman, hope she's watching. and so that's what we want. That's the heart of it, and he wants you to give from that place too. You give because you want to. You don't give because you have to.
Right, and you don't do this in order to be a better person because you think you should.
Right, you just like giving. It's a huge freedom.
Yeah, and that you enjoy the experience more. I mean, one reason why I like to practice this, even when sort of I don't have to, i.e., with strangers or people in the news. Like there's something cleansing about not living with all this internal judgment and
duty, and you discover you really, who would have guessed? I actually like helping people.
Right.
Who would have surprised?
Right.
I was doing it because I wanted to pass as a human being.
Right.
I didn't want everyone to see how I didn't care at all. Now, so let's go back. So now that we understand the heart of it, and just super briefly, but you'll learn this in the book, the ways to get to this place are just observe what's happening, which you showed us between you and this friend, and just observe without judgment what's going on.
Right. The observation could be the words I heard.
Yeah.
This person said, "You love history, don't you?"
And the word love is there too, interesting. And so that's the observation. Then we get in touch with the feelings, and you felt.
I felt surprise, excitement, happiness. So those two things were part of just the first experience. Oh, I'm getting something that I didn't know. But happiness and then actually relaxation that comes with understanding.
Yeah, sure.
Wow, so I understand myself.
So that's first is observation without evaluation. The second is feelings without thoughts, just the feelings.
Right.
The third step is what needs are being revealed, maybe, or discovered at this time.
Right. So it seemed like, so I was. I felt relaxed and at ease because of understanding myself. So there's a need to understand.
There really is a deep need to understand.
Understand oneself, understand other experiences. There was also need for respect and self-respect. And I heard these words and I really just felt, I respect myself. This is a fine thing to be.
So, and Marshall emphasizes too, even when we don't have our needs satisfied, those needs are very beautiful in all people.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful that we all have a desire, a need for self-respect.
Right. I could be in a place where, I'm seeing an old building being knocked down, and I could think, history is not being preserved. These people don't love history the way I love history, but I can still connect to love. And I could still connect to things that I value, and I could be aware of that, and I still have that experience.
Even with the sadness.
Yeah.
And then Marshall says it's very important in this process to mourn needs that are not being satisfied, but still to cherish that we have these needs.
True. Oh, and also what I realized, I just had an insight here, is that, history itself is not a need. No one needs history, but history meets other needs for me. It meets needs for me to understand the world, to experience continuity, to experience depth. We all have a need for depth. Why we like to see a giant waterfall, kind of awe, and also continuity. So those are all needs that this topic, this interest of mine, meets for me.
So that's the three steps: observation without evaluation, feelings without thoughts, and the feelings without thoughts, if we just get the feelings, they, as Paul just showed us, will reveal many needs we have.
Do we want to talk about this when thoughts are mixed up with feelings?
No, because I want to get back to, we might not have to, have you back.
Let's go back to your fabulous story.
Yet. The last step is make doable requests.
Yes.
And this was not we don't have this yet. We will save that for my story, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. Okay, but that's the last step, is to, after you discover what you need, what doable requests.
How do you...
And you might have made that of yourself. After you discovered that you love history,
right,
you might have made many doable requests of yourself.
True.
And probably you read a history book.
I might have sort of given myself permission to follow this interest more coherently.
Which is important.
Yep.
So we've actually summarized the heart of it, including mourning, when you don't get your needs. So now,
all right,
that was the warm-up.
All right.
We have 11 minutes to work on now that you understand the beauty of this process, sadism and nonviolent communication.
Can't wait.
And Paul I'm going to stand up. This is like the Super Bowl. I'm going to stand up for sadism, and Paul is going to stand up for... Well, let's see, underneath that, according to Paul, there are human needs that we should celebrate.
Right, that the sadist is meeting a need. And this is a challenge, because we always want to make space for the person who, the sadist, the violent person, has hurt, and not skip that, and not just sort of rush to be clever, to empathize with people who seem like we could never empathize with them.
Okay, so I'm going to I can do it easily. I'm this child of my parents. Okay, so I like to hurt people. If I had a child, oh poor child, I would be the same.
But and then to say this about yourself would seem to be, encourages me that we've had an insight into your parents, because what needs are you meeting when you're hurting people?
Well, my beloved mother, cherished memory.
Yeah.
I'm doing a one-person, on my 75th birthday, I'm doing a one-person story of about 45 minutes across the street at the Olive Blue Gallery. Right. I'm going to invoke her to come, invite her in spirit. But this is my story. I think that's true of me in some ways. Yes, for sure. If people were happy, she was so miserable in this marriage and with children, 3 boys, poor baby, that she wanted people to be which is understandable. She needed people to be even more miserable than her, so she wouldn't feel so bad about herself.
Great. Let's accept. We don't know that that's true. But let's accept that that's what she wanted. Yeah. And again, what needs would she have? Is she hoping that she would meet if other people were as miserable as her?
Better about, I know that. You feel better about...
She'd both be part of a community, and I think mainly it comes down to that she would be understood. That her suffering would be understood.
Yes,
I think that's a lot of why people...
So at one particular moment, I'm standing in the Crystal Lake with this wonderful, beautiful, significant other of mine, and I'm feeling it's getting too close for me, and I'm having trouble driving 3 hours there and back because it's too... And I feel this deep... This wasn't necessary. I could say, I don't want to really drive here anymore. And I said it, and it hurt her. And because I was feeling bad because it was challenging to.
But it sounds like you didn't share with her the needs that were not met by what you were doing, or the needs that you would meet by not making this trip. And I think we often do that.
I felt better at the moment. That often happens in relationships. If you're feeling bad, you can make the other person feel worse and then feel better than them.
That's true. Well, I'm not sure if that's true. I certainly recognize that impulse. So, and to recognize that in ourselves, that human desire to hurt people, to meet other needs,
to feel better about you can blurt it out, and then they're hurt, and you're feeling.
And can we explore that part about feeling better? What's the better, worse is sort of a general term.
Yes, I've done that. Well, if I'm feeling inadequate as a man who's having trouble in a relationship, and I feel very shaky, and if I can say something that would make you miserable, then I can say, and make you even angry, whatever. I can be in charge again.
very astute. That you can meet your needs for competence, self-respect by
Yes.
being a powerful person.
Yes.
Look at what I can do.
Yes, and don't be upset. I just said that. That's
Right.
just you can't count on me to come and visit all the time if I don't feel like it.
So at the heart of it, it feels.
Wow, this is very interesting.
Yeah. It's what I'm trying to think. It's something about. It's sort of like what need is met by, feeling superior.
Right. The real need, as you would say, and if I don't have this experience you had, if people do not have this experience of empathetic connection that you were gifted with, then we don't know about that. And so we only think, as you said, what was that beautiful statement about skills?
It's beyond your skill level.
It was beyond my skill level to be equal with someone.
Well, I think it comes down to it's beyond your skill level in that moment to express your needs and imagine her needs at the same time.
And to know that there's something very beautiful. And I'm learning that. Thanks to NVC, I'm really learning that. It's so nice.
It is nice.
So let's go back. We have, fortunately, 6 more minutes, hard to believe. Let's go back to those 2 unhappy parents.
Yeah.
Who are really torturing their baby who happens.
They are, sounds like they are wanting to communicate to someone.
I'm not going to allow you to do that, even though this is the God Talk show. There are only the 3 of us.
Okay, so maybe they want to. Let's say they want to communicate to you. We want to let you know, Michael, how really unhappy we are.
Wow, even though I'm 2 months old.
There could be, as Marshall often talks about, actions are tragic expressions. So imagine the tragedy of an adult trying to communicate something as significant as their emotions.
I'm beginning to get it. What if they couldn't tell each other how horrible they were feeling? Or also, it's complicated, wanted to have I believe, a joint product. They could join, they love going to the theater. One of the few things they love doing together. They loved going to the theater. What if there was something about hurting me that brought them together? So this would be more closer to what you're saying.
Meeting needs for connection and closeness.
They were really,
intimacy.
yes. And if they could have only, maybe now, which they eventually did, after 40 years, my father holds my mother's hand and says, honey, we wasted 40 years fighting. Oh, so if they could have said that then, which was hard, that they needed all the nonviolent communication.
The courage to be vulnerable, the courage to express their own.
Instead of doing it in an angry. Oh, if they would have said, "Oh, we really don't like having a child. We're both stuck with this, and let's scream together." Ah!
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And they would both have felt the pain, but together. Oh, so they would have had a chance to do what you had with Discovering History. That we really hate the people. It's hard to say this.
Right.
My father did try to leave. He chose to go to fight the Japanese in World War II rather than stay with the family.
That's a great observation. That's a very accurate. Right. That was a preferable choice.
Yes, for him, not for us. And no, so let's go back. We still have, amazingly, we have 3 minutes. So at the very end, let's assume my interpretation, which is only an interpretation. My mother breaks the bowl because I'm having this empathetic communication with my father, which she doesn't have with him.
So
she doesn't like that. Or my feeling is I'm making it too easy. He leaves home. He leaves his hearing aid.
Right, there's that. Right,
they're working. They're still doing it together, in my interpretation.
It could be, and I think often there's working with interpretation is fine, one, as long as you name it as interpretation.
Yes.
Because it's the reality that you, Michael, are living with. And you can still, while still not knowing and not claiming to know that you know why they did what they were doing.
But the observation without evaluation would be this happened. Right.
Right. And if you say, what need might she be meeting by preventing you from connecting
the
with
same
your
thing
father?
we're talking, that she couldn't quite do it. She wanted to do it with him. And maybe he wanted and maybe he wanted to do it with her.
Right.
And it was.
So we can't let.
So let's go back to the old. Let's go back to the old pattern of hurting him. That was because we weren't able to really share with each other. Although my father could say how painful it was that we wasted 40 years. That's a sentence, and they did hold hands. But to really share those in an empathetic way, what's behind that.
Right.
That would have been. Oh, and so they choose the easy path of hurting
the habit that they're
the
used
habit
to.
and not really getting in touch with what they really need.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, I keep returning to the word tragedy that Marshall uses. The tragedy of people not understanding their needs, not having the capacity, the insight, or the courage to express it. And I think you can also imagine now what it would have meant to you to hear even the littlest piece of empathy or understanding in that situation. That empathy does not have to be a long, complicated, talky thing. It can happen in very few words.
Well, you just gave me empathy for I feel like crying to understand a new way of understanding, to have a new way of understanding this. And we don't have time this time. We could even do it with people, government in Michigan, with Flint, or even with people who have a lot of money, like Donald Trump. We would be interesting.
But, and I'm glad that we really stayed with your story so that you experienced this on an emotional level.
Wow. Well, thank you for joining us.